Hey everybody, welcome. We are in the middle of a series called Lesser Known People of the Bible, and we are talking about a gentleman named Uzzah. Now, if you happen to catch our devotion yesterday on a man named Obed Edom, we're going to go right back to the same exact story. This time we're going to read it out of 2 Samuel chapter number 6. So if you have your Bibles and you can turn there with me, go to 2 Samuel 6, and we're going to start reading from the top of the chapter. Much of this will be repetition. Again, if you saw the Obed Edom video, if not, this will all be new to you. Again, David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people that were with him from Baal of Judah to bring up from thence the ark of God, whose name is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, that dwelleth between the cherubims. And they set the ark of God upon a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the new cart. So we talked about this yesterday. I'm going to stop saying that because it doesn't matter if you didn't see it. But what we have here is David and the men retrieving the Ark of the Covenant, which was the most important piece of furniture in the tabernacle and eventually would go into the temple, because it's the place where the blood of the sacrifice of atonement was shed to atone for the sins of the people, and also it's the place where the very presence of God dwelt. And where the presence of God dwells, there is blessing and good that comes from it. Well, Israel had not had this ark for 20 years. It was in the house of this man named Abinadab, but it wasn't in Jerusalem. And so now they're going to get it. So these guys that were just named here, let me see if I can find it. Verse 3, they set the ark of God upon a new cart. That's not the way it was supposed to be transported. That's why we're going to have this problem today. The ark was supposed to be carried. It had 4 rings, one on each corner. 2 long staves were to be run through those rings. Then 4 men would lift the ark and carry it that way. And so, instead of doing it properly, they put it in the back of a cart. Now, it was a new cart, and I'm sure that was justification for using a cart. And we'll come back to that thought in a minute. And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was at Gibeah, accompanying the ark of God. And Ahio went before the ark. That means he was in front of it. And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord on all manner of instruments made of fir wood, even on harps and on psalteries, and on timbrels and on cornets and on cymbals. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error. And there he died by the ark of God. And that's where we're going to stop reading for today. So here's the scenario. David and the men come to get the ark out of the house of Abinadab, and the law of Moses, as given to him by God, said you're supposed to carry the ark. But they didn't do that. Here's why I think they knew they should have done it, but didn't do it. They bought a new cart to put it in. I think that was their justification for not carrying it. They were going to be carrying it, I think, I don't know how many miles. I shouldn't guess. I know this, from the house of Obed Edom to Jerusalem was 12 miles. So they were carrying it longer or further away than 12 miles. Let's just guess. Let's say 15 miles, just to be conservative. 15 miles. Are there 4 guys that want to carry this thing 15 miles? Now, the truth is, you can rotate out those who are carrying it, and God had given Moses all those instructions. So here you're going to carry it, maybe each man carries it a quarter mile, or perhaps each group of 4 men, I should say, carry it a quarter mile or a half mile, or maybe even 1 mile. I don't know how long they'd be able to carry it. I don't know what the terrain is like. So they said, you know what? We're not going to carry it. We're going to put it in a cart. And someone said, you can't do that to the ark of God. It's supposed to be carried. And so someone else said, well, we'll buy a new cart then, and we'll put it in a brand new cart. So already we're justifying disobedience here. What did God say? God said, carry it. What did they do? They put it in a cart. Now, someone might say to them, hey, God said, carry it. You put it in a cart. And their response would have been, yeah, but it's a new cart. It's a brand new cart. Nothing's ever ridden in this cart before. But that doesn't matter. Disobedience is disobedience. Then there's another problem. As they're driving this cart down the road, 2 oxen are pulling it. The oxen stumble for whatever reason, and all of a sudden the Ark of the Covenant begins to get jostled in the back of this cart. So the man named Uzzah, and he's who we're talking about today. Uzzah, this lesser-known character in the Bible, he reaches out his hand to steady the ark. Now, number one, it could have been instinctually. Remember, back in the day, you'd be driving down the road, and if your mom or dad had to hit the brakes real hard, they'd put their hand in front of you. Whether or not you had a seatbelt on, they instinctually try to hold you and keep you safe. Now, Uzzah may have instinctually just reached out. The problem is, God said, no one is to touch the ark. It is holy unto the Lord. Don't touch it. Uzzah touched it anyway. Now, here's another human logic reasoning argument that can be made. Well, he was doing a good thing. Well, you know what? Whatever you think is the good thing, if it results in disobedience to God, it's not a good thing. How about this? Uzzah wouldn't have had to steady it if they hadn't put it in a cart in the first place, if they had just done right. Now, there's a couple other areas that come to mind regarding this doing what you want to do in spite of what God said to do. And it goes back to King Saul. King Saul was removed from the throne of Israel because of his disobedience to God. One area in which he was disobedient was while waiting on Samuel to come and offer the sacrifice, Saul began to be impatient, and he went ahead and offered the sacrifice himself. It was not his place to offer the sacrifice. God never allowed the king to offer the sacrifice. Only the priest could offer the sacrifice. And Samuel, as a priest, was the one to offer it, and Saul offered it instead on his own. You don't just do whatever you want to do. Then, next thing in Saul's life, God told him to deal with the Amalekite people, to defeat them utterly. He wanted him to kill everything and everyone, every animal, every person, and burn the city down. Instead of doing that, Saul saves the best of the livestock and spares the life of King Agag for whatever reason. We're not told why. And so he doesn't do what God tells him to do. So Samuel shows up and says, didn't God tell you to do these things? And Saul said, oh, I did all that. He said, then why do I hear sheep bleating? Why is King Agag still alive? And so Samuel himself killed Agag. And this is the passage where we read the verse, to obey is better than to sacrifice. It also says rebellion is a sin of witchcraft. So here's what we have going on here. We have what's called situational ethics. And what situational ethics is, if you're unfamiliar with the term, it is when we do what we think is best given the circumstances. Now, God doesn't tell us to do what we think is best when circumstances change. He tells us to do what is right, no matter what the circumstances are. So, hey, David, how are we going to get the ark back to Jerusalem? It's 15 miles, you know. It's a long way to carry it. Yeah, you're right. It is a long way to carry it. Let's put it in a cart instead. But God said carry it. Well, we'll get a new cart. That'll satisfy God. No, it won't either. God will be satisfied with obedience. Oh, the ark is rocking. I better stop it and stabilize it. Okay, Uzzah, you touch it, you die. And he touches it, and he dies. And then, well, What if he had not touched it? Well, the ark would have fallen out. And you say, well, that justifies him touching it. No, it doesn't. Disobedience is never justified based on circumstances. Then we get to Saul, and we get to, well, Samuel was late, so I offered the sacrifice. Doesn't matter. God knew where Samuel was. God knew how the battle was going to go. You should have trusted God instead. Oh, I spared the best of the livestock to sacrifice them. You don't justify your wrongdoing and your disobedience and your rebellion based on what you were going to do for God. It doesn't work that way. Uzzah's mistake is that he said, well, given the circumstances, I'm going to disobey God because I think that's what he would want in the end. Here's the reality. God does not want disobedience no matter what's happening. We're to be obedient regardless of what's going on, and we're to be obedient regardless of how things are going to turn out. The old Methodist preacher, Bob Jones, he said this, do right. Though the stars fall, do right. Situational ethics says, well, I do right, but that's going to make the stars fall, so I won't do right. Now, you don't survey the landscape first. We criticize politicians for, what? Checking the direction of the wind. And no, God says, whatever I say, that's what you do. You don't question it. You don't change it. You don't hesitate. You obey. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. Uzzah. Why do we know Uzzah? We know him for one reason. He touched the ark and he dropped dead for doing it in rebellion to God. I guess we could read one more verse here. Verse 8. And David was displeased. Who's he displeased with? Is he displeased at himself for putting the ark in a cart? Was he displeased at Uzzah for touching the ark when God told him not to? No, David was displeased because the Lord had made a breach upon Uzzah. So David's displeased not with himself, not with God, not with whoever suggested a new cart. He was displeased with God himself. Did I say he was not displeased with God? He was not displeased with himself. He was not displeased with Uzzah. He wasn't displeased to whoever suggested putting it in a cart. He was displeased with God. Well, you know what? When you disobey God and it turns out wrong or turns out bad for you, you shouldn't be upset with anybody but yourself. All right, there it is. Uzzah, Obed-Edom and Uzzah. Same story there, but two different lesser-known characters. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope these lessons are a blessing to you. God bless you. Have a great day.